I ask that out of respect for everyone, please silence all electronic devices. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. The time is 5:30 p.m. I would like to recognize the superintendent for a series of awards and presentations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have a number of acknowledgments as we highlight the great things that happen here in the School District of Indian River County on a daily basis. And to start that highlight, I'll turn it over to our Public Information Officer, Ms. Maddox.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Tonight we have some students here with us who received State Science Fair bids. And we are here tonight to recognize them along with the Education Foundation. If I could have Miss Heidi Leone please come up to the podium with me. She's going to recognize each student and present them with a plaque that is conveniently wrapped in bubble wrap in a box because it's glass and very breakable. But there's a beautiful plaque in there, trust us.
Good evening. Thank you all for having us here tonight and most importantly for honoring these wonderful students. My name is Heidi Leone. I'm the Executive Director of the Education Foundation and so thrilled to be a part of this program. I wanted to thank the school board for this opportunity to recognize these creative students who have received a bid for the science fair, for the state science fair. The Education Foundation is really proud to have been a part of this event since 1992. We've provided the critical funding and support to the school district, and we're true partners on this, in this event. This year, we have given out close to $250,000 in scholarships to these students. That's just the secondary level. One person I wanted to do a special thank you to tonight, it's a little off what is usually done, I think, is a school board member, Terry Barenborg. She really shows up for the students, and I wanted to say thank you. Not only does she judge at both the elementary and the secondary level, she also gave out a special award, and she also shows up for the award ceremony. Thank you very much, Terry. I'd like to also thank the backbone of this science fair. It's the team from the School District of Indian River County, led by Pat Hauser, Lisa Presti, and April Perez. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the LJ Foundation, Public Supermarket Charities, Extant Aerospace, George E. Warren, Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute Foundation, the Dong family, Einstein Brothers Bagels, Tom Delia, Sam's Club, Susan Taylor, the Wall family, and Jeremiah's Italian Ice. And now let's get to it. These 19 students, most of whom are here tonight. St. Ed's is on spring break, but these 19 students have received bids to go to the state fair. It will be in Lakeland in a couple weeks. Elizabeth DeShower, who is also here, will be sponsored by the Ed Foundation to attend the International Science Fair in May. If you all would come forward as we call your name, please. And we will, Mr. Heiser will pass out the awards. And we also have some of the award checks for those of you who received awards. Not everybody did, but most of you received awards at the State Science Fair, the Regional Science Fair. Mr. Seymour will be passing those out tonight. Addison Longman. Daniela Kelly. Ariana Bolton. Avi Johnson. Cesar Dado Slattery. Elizabeth DeShower. Gianna Delia. Gianna Dykes, Harper Hall, Jack Curley, Jackson Weiss, Jay Sullivan, Jordan Shear, Kaylee Webster, Nicholas Rummel, Peyton Kaplan, Samantha McClure, Sienna Malone, and Uma Christofali. Thank you all. If you'd stay up here for a picture, that would be great.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give them another round of applause.
And just as the science team leader, I just want to acknowledge the efforts. I know we acknowledge Ms. Barenborg, but to the entire team. Over the last year, we've been very intentional of increasing enrollment. Our secondary participation has increased by 20%, which is something we're extremely proud of. Matter of fact, we've had to divide the event. We moved it from the middle school, Gifford Middle School, when I first got here, to just last year having divided at the high school on 2 separate weekends because of the volume. Last month, we had our secondary students participate in the science fair competition where the judges go through. Obviously, Ms. Barenborg is qualified to be a judge, me, not so much. And so much of our community is out there forming and working as judges. It's very, very impressive to see. While at the same time that judging was taking place, in the gym on the opposite side of the campus was the elementary students in competition, robot races, and all kinds of different events using what they've learned in classroom. It was a really, really exciting day. Last weekend we had the elementary schools and once again packed. So significant improvement and expected continued growth of what we're doing around this work. So I just want to acknowledge the team, their hard effort, the Ed Foundation for your continued support to grow this initiative. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. Appreciate the fact that we divided it, and I hope to see the amount of projects grow next year. And I wish I could be at the awards tomorrow night, but I'm going to Tallahassee. So when she said that, I felt bad, but I'm going to be going up to Tallahassee on behalf of the board tomorrow. So thank you.
Okay, so we are excited for the second month now to have our Shining Star Awards. We are recognizing a student involved in extracurricular activities and someone from our safety and security spotlight. So we're going to start out with a student, and I am going to ask the person who nominated this student, Miss Courtney, and any of the special area teachers from Fellsmere to come up to the podium, because she wrote a beautiful nomination letter, and I don't want to take away from that because I know she has a few words to say.
Hello, good evening. My name is Sharice Courtney. I have the privilege of being the music teacher at Fellsmere Elementary, my second year in a row. Before I announce the student, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Jones for attending our first annual Noche de Encanto last week, and also thank you to the board for recognizing the arts in education. Okay, So this was a very difficult choice for the specialist teachers at Fellsmere Elementary because we have so many amazing fine arts students. I recommended Gabriel Pena, a 5th grader, for this award and recognition. Gabriel has been involved in the music club both this year and last year. He has attended nearly every single concert and every single rehearsal. At the beginning of this year, he was gifted with a trumpet by the Fellsmere Police Department. He has taken it upon himself, because I have very limited trumpet knowledge, so himself, and also help from his older brother from the Sebastian River High School Jazz Band, to learn how to play this instrument. So any song that he can possibly play on, he will go home and learn the notes all on his own and come prepared and ready to play. If there is a song that he cannot play on trumpet, he will volunteer or beg to sing or play the drums or play guitar. He's also learning piano, and a lot of it he does at home on his own time. I can count on Gabriel for any role that I need him to fill in any of our concerts or anything that I need him to help out with. Additionally, he was also recommended by his other special area teachers, who all have agreed that Gabriel works hard in every subject, and also by his academic teachers as well. So this is why we at Fellsmere Elementary have recommended Gabriel Pena to receive this award.
If he had his trumpet, I'm sure he would play it though, right? Let's get a picture, honey.
Congratulations, my man.
A little bit, I will move out of the way, I promise. Okay, here you go. All right, ready? 1, 2, and 3. All right, let's get family, Mr. E. Everyone, come on up. Who's here for Gabriel? Of course, with Courtney.
Congratulations.
Okay. Ready, say trumpet. All right, another round of applause. And for our safety and security spotlight, I'd like to ask Mr. Eric Seymour and Mr. John Teskey to come to the podium, please.
Okay, Mr. Teskey, we have a script, and we've been asked to follow the script. But thank you. Again, it's our pleasure to recognize individuals that, on a daily basis, protect our schools, love our children, and make sure that children go home safe. Nominated by Mr. Chris Cummings, Lori Anderson by far is our shining star. She leads our team of great security monitors with scheduling post assignments, ensuring all areas have adequate coverage, providing planning for on-campus events during the school day and after school, and many other items that we as administrators may not even think of. She is student-centered and maintains a positive mindset in the most challenging situations, and I will mention one of those situations. We had a big scare, and sometimes we do, we call it a scare, but there was a situation where, just imagine, of all of the doors at a particular place or school, you lose the keys, and you don't know who might have those keys, because they are all electronic, and or either there's one particular key that may open each and every door. So for days, we walked, looked, called, researched, did all of our background checks, checked cameras, got law enforcement involved. And guess what? This one person was able to solve that mystery for us by finding that key. This one person saved us, taxpayers, thousands of dollars. This one person took pressure off of us, our department, law enforcement, because this involved protecting teachers, staff, students alike. This one person took the time to go out and make sure that that campus was protected. And I believe that this person on each and every day, if there was an opportunity, she would be a shining star. Mr. Teske.
Yes. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly and support everything that you're doing at Sebastian High School. Just a quick story. It's probably about September timeframe, and I'm known for creeping around campuses and cruising around in my car, and I pull in unannounced because I like to test the protocols and the safety procedures at all the schools. So I pulled into Sebastian High School, pulled in near the ROTC department around back, making my checks, and driving around, and I look in my rearview mirror, and I'm getting pulled over by a golf cart. And I said, did I just get lit up by a golf cart? I think I did. I actually pulled over, and Lori pulled up alongside of me, and I rolled my window down, and I said, do you want my license and registration? She takes her job very seriously, and I knew at that point we had a keeper there, and she epitomizes safety and security at Shark Nation. So from all of us, we thank you, Lori, for everything that you're doing. Come on up.
Y'all getting there. Feel free to give Mr. Teske a ticket next time.
Congratulations.
Dr. Moore, may I say something?
Absolutely.
I had the pleasure of recommending Lori Anderson for our first safety person many years ago, the only one we had on campus. And from day one, the professionalism, the commitment to safety, commitment to students and staff was unbelievable. So thank you very much for what you do every day. Thank you.
So it's finally time for the gala recap video, and if you don't understand why I'm so excited about that, it's because last board meeting it was time, but I introduced the wrong video. So this is a recap of our gala that we had back in January, on January 20th, and we had our winner, Ashley Bangert, our Teacher of the Year, and our Employee of the Year, Liz Geoffrey. So this will take you back a couple months and just show you a highlight of that night and how amazing it was.
Doc Jones, our Employee of the Year is
Liz Geoffrey.
I am just so proud to represent my school, and to hear my name announced as the person to represent the whole district is just a dream come true. My team is fabulous. Ms. Good is with us now going on our third year, and She lets me be me, and Ms. Norwood came to us. This is her second year. Our counselor, our coaches, our teachers, they're just all amazing, and they've given me so much love and support and everything I do at the school.
Our Teacher of the Year winner,
Ashley Bangert.
To represent the entire school district and all of the teachers within it means everything. I grew up in this district. I watched teachers change lives in this district, and I am looking forward to helping make that change for others. First thought that went into my head when I was announced the Teacher of the Year for the school district was, I hope I made my mom and dad proud. And after that, all of the people in the audience that helped support me and help me grow as a student first and then an educator here in the district, I hope I made them proud as well.
So, Madam Chair, that is a very unique event. In most districts, they have a very formal event where they introduce their Teacher of the Year and their Employee of the Year. I breached the subject of trying to switch it into one of those formal events, and I was quickly put in my place to say that we have to keep this tradition. And when you see that video, it is a day of celebrating public education, the impact that our teachers and our employees have on our system. So every year you get to see yourself in a different outfit. That was my version of the 20s. But what a great celebration and great representatives both for Employee and Teacher of the Year.
Thank you.
and in addition to that celebration, we did have a very nice formal dinner. Thank you, Napier and Roland. And thank you to Mid-Florida, who sponsors our gala every year. They give us over $10,000, so just a shout out to them. They really, truly make it possible. So last but certainly not least, we have our Casual for a Cause presentation. If you're not familiar with Casual for a Cause, each month our students, teachers, and staff members, in exchange for a donation, they have a designated day where they can dress down. And those donations go to an organization that's on our Casual for a Cause calendar. And last month it was this source. And we have Tony Zorbaugh, the executive director. And Tony, is Beverly here, or are you by yourself? Well, welcome, Johnny. We're so happy to have you. If you'd please come to the podium. And our students, teachers, and staff members raised $2,406 for the source.
Hi again, I'm Johnny Roscoe. I'm the development director at The Source. Tony wishes he could be here, but I'm more fortunate than he is tonight. So we're a 27-year-old nonprofit organization in Vero Beach, and a lot has changed over those 27 years, but the one thing that hasn't changed is who we're doing the work that we're doing it for, and it's the poor and less fortunate in our community. And so it only felt right for me to share tonight's news with them and ask them how they felt about it. And they were just, the one thing that they had to say was thank you. Thank you to all the students. They were just blown away by this gesture. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. And that concludes presentations.
Okay, this will conclude our presentation. The time is 5:54. We will start again just so we can get some people in and out at 6:05 p.m. for our business meeting. Thank you, 6:05. This meeting to order. The time is 6:03 p.m. Out of respect for everyone, please silence all electronic devices. At this time, I would like to present the Sebastian River High School Navy Junior ROTC under the direction of Lieutenant Commander James Landis and Master Sergeant Michael Hussey. For the Pledge of Allegiance and colors, please stand.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order. Post. Ready. Cut. Post. Post. March. Post. Post. And salute. Ready. Two. Post. March. Right. Face. Forward. March. Left. 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 Right. Right. Left. 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 Right.
Thank you very much, Sebastian River High School. Okay, board members, now we are on the adoption of the orders of the day. Are there any items, board members, you wish to move from consent to action?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Rosario?
7E.
And what is the name of that one, please, Ms. Rosario?
The approval of the amendment for legal services agreement.
Thank you.
8A, the approval of personnel recommendations.
Okay.
9A, which is the approval to set the public hearing for the code of conduct.
All right.
And I'd like to add to discussion, citizen input.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay, I'd like to call for a motion to adopt the adoption of the orders of the day. A motion?
So moved.
Mr. Barefoot?
I'll second.
Second, Ms. Berenborg. A vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay, Dr. Moore, it's time for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hot off the presses, I would like to share some data and some updates with our school board and our community. We'll pull the slide up, and there it is. This is our district update. And this first slide that you see here is the iReady diagnostic. This is our second diagnostic. We're taking it later in the year because of the progress monitoring. And I'm sharing today the ELA, Language Arts Progress Monitoring. As you can see, from a systems perspective, we're at about 92, almost 92% done. Middle school's at 89, 94.1. We're still in the window of testing, but as you can see, ELA typically goes first, followed by math. We'll finish math in the upcoming days. So before I talk about the data itself, I want to talk about the process on how we use this data. This data will be used over the course of this week to disaggregate what we have done successful, where are the opportunities to reteach, and then how do we coordinate the action moving forward so when we return from spring break, we have a clearly defined plan for each and every single student in the 5 weeks we have leading up to the actual assessment. So this is data, it is just not informative in terms of providing information as to where we sit within our community. It informs instruction. It is a tool that we use to shift interventions, to provide additional interventions. It is tools that we use to disaggregate the impact of instruction during planning times in order to determine where do we shift or modify. We have a very clear expectation, and the expectation is unwavering. That expectation last year led to a state ranking improvement of 16 state rankings. That is the highest rate of improvement, with one district, small district, matching that improvement. The expectation that I have is to continue to have the most improvement across the state. And many will say, Dr. Moore, don't overpromise. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not overpromising. Based on what we're doing in our schools, the focus that we have on data, and the kinds of conversations we have around that data, that should be the collective expectation. A conversation that I had 3 years ago, over almost 3.5 now. One of the questions I wanted to answer is why does Miami have a ELA score that's 6 percentage points higher than Indian River County? That makes no sense. It should not be the reality. We should be, we being Indian River County, 6 percentage points higher than Miami. No offense, Miami, but that's just the truth. And when you use an expectation that is unwavering, and you're able to evaluate the impact that we're having on the lives of children on a daily basis, you see us continuing to move in an extremely positive direction. So when you look at this data as a whole, what you're looking at is the iReady assessment comparing the end-of-year diagnostic compared to the end-of-diagnostic last school year. So if you look at our elementary schools, there's a couple things that I want to point out. In 21-22, the third grade took that assessment in 8 weeks from now. So they took it at the end of the school year for after they took the FSA assessment for possible promotion. So there was 8 additional weeks for third graders in this data set. And typically each week of instruction, your level of students scoring 3 or above ultimately increases. So when you look at our elementary in 21-22, including the additional 8 weeks of instruction for our third graders, you see in this year we were at 63%. Last year we were at 63%, and this year we are at 67.2%, which is an increase of 4.2%. So we know that's even going to be higher if the third graders took the assessment at the same exact time. So we are really, really proud of what we're seeing in our elementary schools. Once again, the expectation is to continue to improve. We want to see significant improvement. When you look at our middle schools, and what we realize in looking at our middle schools, the students in their most informative years, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, those are now our 6th graders. The impact that the pandemic has had on them academically, both in reading and math, is where we're seeing significant opportunities to continue to improve instruction. So even with the impacts of the pandemic, when we look at where our middle school students were this year to last year, you see a slight uptick of 0.4%. And you need to keep in mind, when you look at the percent of students that were 3 or above in this school year in comparison to last school year, it's about 2 percentage points higher last year compared to this year. So you have students who didn't perform as well as the previous set of students the year before, and they're still outpacing them. So we're proud of that number. Once again, this is kind of where we are as a whole. We're about 2.3 percentage points higher than we were at this same time last year, with significant opportunities to continue to use this instruction to drive. As soon as we have math over the 90%, I'll come back at our upcoming board member and make sure we provide an update to the board. I also wanted to speak through attendance. So we are just going to complete our third 9 weeks, meaning that we will be 3/4 of the way through the school year. It has been something we have been unapologetic about in terms of improving student attendance. And when you look at elementary school, last year it was 92.5. Right now we're at 93.3 over the course of the first 9 weeks. high school over a percentage point improvement, as well as middle school at 0.7% improvement, altogether 0.8. So when you look at just that 0.8%, that's over 1,100 hours of additional instruction that's being provided on a daily basis. It is significant. When we have an expectation that students are in school and they're provided meaningful instruction on a daily basis, you in fact will see improvements by the simple fact students are in school. I also kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper in the data. And when you look at the 95%, which we define as being adequate attendance, 95% or above, severe is 90 to 95%. Some people would say, oh, 90% is not severe. Yes, it is. And then chronic, 90% or below. And what you see in this slide as you dig into this data, we are growing the green. And when I say growing the green, at this time last year, only 40% of our students had 95% or above, where this year 45% of our students are at 45%. And then you look at the yellow, you say it stays the same, but you keep in mind, we moved that 5% of up to the green, and you look at the red, we've also shrunk the red in terms of chronic, meaning students who are not in school 90% or above. And this is a system-wide approach that we look at extracurricular activities, participation in sports teams, teachers upholding the expectations around credits being issued in school. It is a whole district approach. And we as a community need to continue to have the conversation around attendance, because it is something that a school site or a school system should embrace. And the expectation created for students in a school should translate into the world of work or into the world of college. And you need to create behaviors for our students that lead to success. Below 95% attendance isn't a behavior that would ultimately lead to success in the world of work. So we want to continue to see improvements in this particular area. Also wanted to highlight our Fortify app. And our students have made it abundantly clear in our community, in our school community. When you're going to do something, fellow students, that is inappropriate, that revolves around violence or possibly bringing a weapon to school, you are going to be told on, for lack of a better way of saying it. This app is being used to ensure that our community expectation in our classrooms is in fact protected. And it is non-negotiable, that environment. Teaching and learning, the impact that we want to have on students will not happen unless students stand up for those environments in their schools. And I can tell you on a daily basis, our students understand that expectation. We have been pushing this information all year long, and we're seeing absolute outstanding use of this tool that allows us to get to children to provide the needed intervention or consequences, whatever the two may be. So we need to continue to inform our students in our community. This is the opportunity to have an anonymous way of reporting something that may lead to harm to self or to others, and we can provide the appropriate intervention in real time. These apps, these notifications come to pretty much everyone sitting down here, Mr. Bass, Mr. Seymour, myself, Mr. Teskey, the assigned principals. It is a massive share of information that it gets us the information. And our students are putting other students on notice. When you want to disrupt or jeopardize the safety of this environment, we're going to let somebody know, because it is absolutely unacceptable. And we appreciate and acknowledge those students who are sharing and upholding that expectation. Want to take it a little step further. We understand students having a system to anonymously report incidents so we can get that response. This is on our website. So if you looked here and you see that red circle, this is how you would access this information. And I know it's small on the screen, but if you were able to click on that says contact, you'll be able to contact us. The first two is name and email address. The statement above it basically says if you would like to be contacted, you can fill out, but not required, name and email address. and you put the subject as well as who you would like to contact. And it gives you district office, it gives you the respective cabinet members, it gives you myself, in which that information is provided directly to me. So communication is key. This is a system to either fill out your name, ask questions in order to get answers, or do it anonymously to get that information to us. And if we're collectively to uphold this expectation, this is yet another system that we have in place in order to communicate, in order to ensure we have every opportunity to look at the reality in our schools at absolutely every level, to provide the highest level of intervention and the highest level of accountability that all of our children rightfully deserve. And Madam Chair, that is my presentation for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Board members, questions? Ms. Rosario?
Thank you. Dr. Moore, we have new standards, and we also have the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking, which is the new, the FAST assessment that has been given to the students, to students. It started in August of this year. I believe they were given 2 tests, the one in August and then one mid-year. That FAST test or that FAST assessment is supposed to be used as the diagnostic to drive instruction, and then at the end of the year used in a similar fashion to last year's, the old annual exam, to see where their progress is. How does that align with iReady, and why aren't we using that as the diagnostic instead of iReady?
Because the lack of information that's being provided doesn't allow us to drive or identify opportunities to improve. It simply just gives us a score. It doesn't tell us the specifics as where the deficit is. Good teaching and learning, as you know, is differentiated. The state is working on that. So we want to address the deficit, just not a score. So if I am not reading at grade level, is it fluency, is it comprehension? I need to know where to fill in the void. This data provides that. So it is 100% aligned to the new standards. And as the state of Florida grows that, we'll have those conversations around it. But this is what we use to ensure that we're making the most informed decisions to improve the quality of instruction, to improve the outcomes for kids.
I know that we've talked about this before. It's even one of our legislative priorities to see if the Department of Education will enhance what is being shared with the schools in terms of the data from the FAST assessments. So I appreciate the explanation there. A concern, though, that I have heard, and I'd like for you to, if you don't know it now, that's fine, if you can bring it back to us, that the concern is that the iReady doesn't align with the FAST. So we might be looking at results that are actually going to come out or turn out to be completely different than what the state assessment will monitor, you know. So I'm just concerned about the alignment of both of those as we look at these numbers. These numbers might be higher or lower depending on whatever the FAST assessment would provide for us.
Through the chair, iReady is 100% aligned in terms of looking at the standards. You are correct. There may be a variance of outcome because when a student receives a score,
right.
That is the particular score. Now, what is a level 1, 2, 3, or 4? I'm sorry, what is your actual school grade? Those parameters may shift. So when you're looking at overall school grades, the state hasn't set that. That's why they're going to tell us school grades. You may not get that until November or December of next year, but we will have their student score. And as the state moves forward, it will provide additional data that we could manipulate in a way that helps us inform our decision-making process as it relates to instruction.
Well, one of the concerns also, and there's nothing we can do about it because it is what it is in terms of being a baseline year for the FAST test. One of the, I guess, the amendments to the rule for us that has been already approved by the State Department of Education, not the state, the Federal Department of Education, is that because we have new benchmarks And because we have this new assessment, that we will have an absence of learning gains in this baseline year. So I don't know how that will eventually affect school grades or student grades moving forward. Hopefully it won't, but do you have any input on as far as the learning gains are concerned?
So just to provide additional information, Ms. Rosario is correct. They will not have learning gains. So if you looked at an elementary school, they make points, 700 points. This year's school grade is only going to be based on 300 points, so 100 points per category. So the reading gains and the math gains and the lowest 25% gains in reading and math will not be part of the equation. There are schools in our county and across the state that do absolutely tremendous work. They're A and B schools, but they demonstrate significant growth, meaning all students. You can't control where a student is when they walk into a school on day one, but you definitely can influence where they walk out on day 180. So this year, because it is a baseline year, you can't compare growth from one year to the next if you don't have 2 years to compare. This is year one. So when Ms. Rosario is stating there may be concern for school grades, the answer is 100, yeah, of course, because there are schools that are C schools and B schools that earned that right to call themselves C and B schools based on their growth. So you look at Pelican Island, which is a small school. You look at Sebastian, which is a small school. Sebastian is a B school. But when you look at their learning gains in lowest 25% across the board, that's why they're a B. That's why they're a B. So there may be shifts in school grades next school year because we're not going to have the opportunity to highlight the growth for students. So if only 50% of the students are at a level 3, 4, or 5, unless we move the other 50% to 3, 4, and 5, there's no way to capture points or growth for them. So it is a proceed with caution and deep understanding when you're looking at school grades next year. And to be honest with you, we're going to start the school year without school grades as they're going to be norming that process.
And then why just only present the ELA and not the math as well?
So if I would not want to present to anybody or even look at myself data until it is complete. So we're at about 45–50%, which is absolutely fine because we're in the window. But it would not be appropriate for me to share data that could drastically change in a public format when the other 50%. So it can go up significantly or it can go down significantly depending on which set of students have took that test.
So they're still taking it now?
Yes, they're still taking it, and they're not behind. They're within the window. So we're fine with that. I just didn't want to sit on this. If I had it and was over 90%, I wanted to share.
Will you bring us the math at the end of next month?
Absolutely, as well as our EOC work.
And then the last thing is the middle school grades here. When you bring the math, can we look at all of this together, including the ELA as well? I'd like to see a history of these scores going back to prior years prior to the pandemic. If the pandemic really was an issue, then we should see a bigger dip than in previous years in terms of the pattern. But if it isn't, then we'll be able to see that when we look at all of those scores. But so, a few years before the pandemic and then up until today, if we can get those scores so we can compare, that would be helpful.
So absolutely, when you look at some of those results, just off the top of my head, the first year of the pandemic, the first year we did not take assessments. The second year we lost 7 percentage points in math, 4 or 5 in our EOCs, whether it be civics or U.S. history. We were able to get back 4 of those points last year in math and still see a decline in comparison to where we were with some of our EOCs in previous year. So there is a clear connection with outcomes connected to the pandemic, and we're on the backside of that now, where consistent instruction will allow us to continuously grow, to get back to where we were pre-pandemic, and then in some cases ultimately exceed where we were pre-pandemic. But I'll provide that information.
I appreciate that. What I meant, maybe I wasn't clear, what I meant is in the next presentation, if you could include that information in the slides.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barefoot. Good. Ms. Berenborg? Just one thing, just to remind everybody, Dr. Moore, I've double-checked with you several times on the alignment with iReady, so I'm good with that. But this new test, no gains, no lower quartile, of course, new testing, and looking at the alignment of what we have. So with the grades coming in November or December, basically what we can look at is how they did from test 1 to test 2 to test 3. Is that correct?
That is correct. Now, it is still a high-stakes testing because that one result that you take on that third progress monitoring, you're not receiving any growth points or acknowledgement of growth from PM1 to PM2 to the third progress monitoring. You're only receiving it in comparison to where you were at the previous year. And that is why we're not having learning gains this year.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for the report. Now we go to guidelines for citizen input. I will read these and then we'll start calling people up. Thank you. Each statement made by a member of the public shall be limited to 3 minutes duration. Person will be recognized in the order in which the requests were received. The time shall start when the speaker is at the podium. The school board attorney will be the official timekeeper. As you will see, the time clock is visible to your left on the dais. You will hear a beep at the end of your 3 minutes. You may speak up to 3 minutes at the beginning of a business meeting during citizen input as indicated on the order of business, and up for 3 minutes to the action item agenda during the action agenda, and each board member discussion item is indicated on the order of business. If a consent item is moved to an action item, when you come up to the podium, you may speak at that time or defer to speak at the presentation of the action item. But reminder, people may only speak once about any given item. Time period may be extended by the presiding officer. Only the individual submitting the speaker's form is allowed to address the board. Time may not be yielded to other speakers. During the meeting, please refrain from clapping or outbursts of any sort so that we can proceed with dignity and with decorum by not infringing on any individual's First Amendment rights. I need to remind everyone to direct all comments to the chairperson, not to an individual board member or the superintendent. Board members may or may not address any citizen input statements at the end of citizen input comments. As board members listen to citizens without interruption, citizens are asked to give board members the same respect. As per Florida Statute 1001372, subsection 3, the presiding officer of any district school board may order the removal from a public meeting held by the district school board of any person interfering with the expeditious or orderly process of such meeting, provided such officer has first issued a warning that continued interference with this orderly process of the meeting will result in removal. I'll be calling 2 up at a time. The first person will speak to the podium to speak, and the second person will be in line to speak. And if you have anything to give to board members or the superintendent, please do so through our executive assistant, Ms. Esplin. Thank you very much. Our first citizen is Bob Bruner, followed by Jennifer Pippin.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you this evening about something that's really close to me, is vocational education. I am an instructor and I taught in a building trade program at Mideast Career and Technology Center, and it was a 2-year program. I taught both juniors and seniors. I would have juniors in the morning and seniors in the afternoon, and when they weren't with me, they were with their academic instructors. And since there's 4 grading periods in a school year, the first year we covered masonry, carpentry, electric, and plumbing. We covered all 4 of the different trade areas, and I taught my students how to lay concrete block, how to read blueprints, how to lay out a foundation for a house. And then in carpentry, I taught them how to use the power tools and how to read blueprints. And then electric, we actually wired lights, switches, and receptacles, and I taught them how to tie back into the main breaker boxes. And then the third grade, the fourth grading period, we did plumbing, and my students learned how to cut, clean, and solder. They learned about traps, vents, and all kinds of different plumbing. And their senior year, my students actually built a house at the Career Center. And we built the house on 3 steel I-beams, and my seniors did everything from helping me estimate the material, to picking out the blueprint, to doing all the framing, the drywall, the electric, the plumbing. And at the end of the school year, we would have an open house and invite the public down. And my program was one of the only programs at the Career Center that actually paid for itself, because we sold the house. It was a nice house for somebody in the community. It was great for an open house for the people to come down to the Career Center. And I had some of the highest enrollment of any program in the vocational school. I had the highest retention, because once we started building the house, they wanted to see what it was going to look like when we finished. So it was a really great program, and I could see maybe the need for something similar to that down here. I know it wouldn't be the same as building it on 3 steel I-beams and moving it to a foundation because of the construction down here, but the school district owns a lot of different properties, and I was thinking maybe you could look into something like building houses for disabled veterans. You know, the small houses for veterans that are homeless, or working with Habitat for Humanity and building houses with Habitat for Humanity, tying the school back into the community with the veterans and with people who need homes or are looking for homes. About ready to run out of time. I practiced this at home to see if I could say it all in 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Winter. We appreciate it.
by the way, I was here earlier this morning, and I'd like to thank you for putting in a long day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ms. Pippin, and then Cindy Gibbs. Ms. Pippin. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Pippin, and I'm the chairman of Moms for Liberty Indian River, Florida, and one of the co-founders for We the People, Indian River County. And I sent you all last week 3 emails from the DeSantis book ban hoax, is what they called it. And I know that you guys received it, and I hope you guys had a chance to watch the first 12 minutes of the video. If you did not, I know some of you have very busy schedules. The first 12 minutes went through library books throughout the state that are prohibited from HB 1467, HB 7, and things that are, prohibited by law, and the law's been in place for a long time. I know we've had that discussion. But one of those 10 books are actually on the shelves in our school district, which was alarming. We haven't challenged it yet because we were waiting for the policy and the procedure to be updated, for the committee to get, trained and everything like that. But if you haven't got a chance to watch the video, please watch it. You won't be able to find it on any news outlets because they had to stop streaming their live stream because of the sexually graphic and inappropriate content, again, that were found from materials found in schools from across the state and across the country. They actually had in there the books where they were removed from. So if anybody wanted to do a public records request, they could see that they were permanently removed from multiple districts across the state. And Indian River was not named with one of those books, just so you guys know, because it hadn't been challenged yet. And in that book ban hoax, where Governor DeSantis was, kind of fixing all of these myths and all of these misinformation things that were going around, something happened here in Indian River County that he brought up. At no time did anybody from the Department of Education, his cabinet, anything, say that, classroom libraries or libraries needed to be closed. And I know last year one of the libraries were closed. It was put in TC Palm, and we later found out, I discussed with you guys, a public records request where we found that the teachers union actually asked classroom teachers to not open up their libraries. So the biggest thing and the biggest reason why I wanted to send that to you guys and why it's so important is because there's so much information going around, there's so much judgment, there's so much things that are wrong that, he took from across the state and issues from across the state and put it in this, quick video. And he also debunked the AP African American studies as well, and what he removed from that curriculum that is not here in Indian River County, by the way. That course we found out from a public records request. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pippin. Cindy Gibbs, and then Dr. Mara Shipp.
Good evening. I had the absolutely delightful experience this weekend of an entire day from 7:30 in the morning until about 6 o'clock at night. Spent my entire day with kids from this school district, and it was, what a joy. Exhausting, what a joy. I had the opportunity to be a judge at our regional science fair that we heard such wonderful things about before, and it reminded me of how much I liked being the science fair coordinator at Sebastian Elementary for a few years when I was teaching there. And in fact, my last year here in the district, my third graders took first place in their science fair. And it was really nice to be back to it. And I just want to share what an absolutely wonderful experience it was to be in the cafeteria at Vero Beach High School and talking to 10 and 11-year-old kids about their science fair projects and how they were inspired by things they had read. Because my first question is always, where'd you come up with this idea? And I was kind of expecting to hear, well, I saw something on YouTube, or I looked at sciencebuddies.com, or the way that a lot of kids who aren't very motivated will find a project. But the kids that made it to regional, the one boy that I spoke to, whose project was phenomenally creative, he took it literally from a novel he's been reading. And he was so excited to share that with me, that something that he read inspired him to look into something that's affecting his environment. And at 11 years old, he's already considering what he'd like to do as an adult, maybe working in forest firefighting. And that's what his project was on. It was amazing. What a great time to have a conversation with one of our youth and how happy he was with his education. And then I spent 6 hours at Sebastian River High School because my daughter is on the track team, and I hung out with all her friends and listened to what the kids were saying. And then later that evening, my husband and I have this trick. We like to make sure that all the neighborhood kids know that they can come hang out at our house, because we stay in the house and they hang out on the patio, and then we get to hear all the dirt. Oh boy. And it's good because we know what's going on. We know who's in trouble. We know whose families might need help. And it's important to us that our kids are connected to their community. All the bad news that we hear around here all the time, I wanted to bring a little bit of sunshine, because most of the kids I know are in really great shape. They're really connected. They have good relationships with their teachers and their families. And I think it's important that the rest of our community is aware that not everybody is showing up to school in trouble. It's the rare exception. It's easy to attach ourselves to the bad news. It travels quickly. But there are so many of our youth in our community that are living a good life, and they are going to save us all, because they're the ones that get along with each other, and they're not bothered by all of the static. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Dr. Schiff, and then Julia White.
Good evening. Well, I'm not going to be as nice as Cindy. I'm going to speak a little bit to a couple of issues that came up in the superintendent's workshop this afternoon, specifically the code of conduct and the racial equity policy. I want to be clear that when we talk about the code of conduct, what's the goal, right? The goal of the code of conduct is to create safe school environments, is to keep our kids safe. When we talk about replacing evidence-based proven strategies with things like zero tolerance, I want to be clear and understand where we're getting our information from. Because I've been doing this work a long time, and what I'm clear is that there's no evidence suggesting that zero tolerance discipline produces positive outcomes. To the contrary, and if you can provide me with documented research evidence, empirical research evidence that says that zero tolerance produces safer schools, I'd be delighted to see that. I haven't seen it. What I have seen is, for example, a report from the U.S. Secret Service analysis of plots against schools called Averting Targeted School Violence. And what they say is that targeted violence is preventable when communities identify warning signs and intervene. Schools should intervene with students when their behavior, before their behavior warrants legal consequences. Students were most often motivated to plan a school attack because of grievances with classmates. Students are best positioned to identify and report concerning behaviors displayed by their classmates, evidenced by the Fortify presentation in the superintendent's report. Removing a student from school does not eliminate the risk they might pose to themselves or others. In fact, 5 plotters, meaning students or people who caused harm in schools, were recent former students who had left school within 1 academic year as they had been expelled, enrolled in other schools, graduated, or dropped attending classes. This indicates that simply removing a student from the school without appropriate supports may not necessarily remove the risk of harm they pose to themselves or others. I could go on about this, but I'm short on time. I want to be clear in this that you can't simultaneously rage about reducing and responding to rampant bullying on the one hand, and then systematically and systemically remove the supports that are put in place to teach children empathy, respect, self-regulation, compassion, cooperation. We need to actually figure out how to do that and maintain those supports in our schools if in fact what we're looking to produce is safer schools. Lastly, to the racial equity policy. Thank you, Dr. Jones, for putting in place a new policy that addresses what was clearly left out. I reviewed the policies that were said to encompass all of the things that were going to be removed in the racial equity policy, and they didn't. They don't address a lot of them. So thank you to the board for agreeing to review that. I'm concerned, however, that some board members actually acknowledged that this was not an issue of significant importance to them, despite having been aware that these was important language and important sign to our community.
Thank you very much. Julia White and then Anthony Brown.
Good evening. This afternoon while watching the superintendent's workshop, I saw a library that I'm very familiar with as a former Sebastian River High School student. And it was nice to see that it might be brought up to today's standards. And it was just lovely to look through those illustrations. And I really do hope that project comes to fruition. I spoke earlier this year about the Citrus Bowl and the much needed improvements there. And it's really nice to hear that they're gonna get the turf this year. I live right next door to Glendale Elementary, and the Parent Loop project that is working. There's no traffic stopped on 8th Street, and the new cafeteria that went in there are just amazing. So kudos to actually getting those projects done. And there's a nice big development that's going in right next to Glendale Elementary, so that is going to affect traffic in that area, and there's possibly another one going in across the street from it. So future thought. But the reason I'm talking about these projects is that there seems to be a loss of projects. And what I mean by that is when my son was a first grader, the Parent Loop, as well as the cafeteria, was supposed to be worked on that summer. He's a senior. So time has lapsed. The Citrus Bowl, for example, when we did the home side, which was a much needed renovation due to deterioration, there was talks about doing the away side in the field the following year, a couple years down the road, and I believe that was supposed to be done this summer, and now we're having to pull funding to do the turf, and this goes on and on. I know that the lights and the packs at both Sebastian River High School and Vero Beach High School were supposed to be replaced with LED lights. Don't know where that project stands. Doesn't seem to be happening. I know Dr. Jones mentioned the seats in the Sebastian River High School pack. I have seen those seats. They are awful, and they've been there since the school was built. So why am I talking about all this? I had a thought, had an idea. Don't know if it'll ever come to fruition, but I think we need to leverage our community, maybe do some crowdsourcing. What would be really nice to see is a page, a landing page where you could see these projects, have the restricted accounts maybe available so people can make donations straight to those accounts to fund things that they have the heart to fund. So I'll yield the rest of my time, but thank you for all your work. Thank you for putting in long days, and look forward to seeing these projects come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia White. Thank you. Anthony Brown and then Kevin Browning.
Good evening. Racial equity policy. A great black man once said, Man does not care much for man that does not care for himself. We're here because we care. And the racial equity policy that you did in 2020 is an awesome document. I've been on the equity committees, 1, 2, and 3. I'm on the workshop committee for the DSEG, and I have not seen a document come out of this district as powerful and definitive as the original policy. But I'm hurt by the fact that we've weaponized words within that document: equity, diversity, and inclusion. When I was served, we did the Pledge of Allegiance. When I was in the military Vietnam era, we thought that's what we were fighting for: equity, diversity, and inclusion. But as I stand before you today, it's eroded, it's gone. We now are looking at you defining to us how we perceive it. Some people says that systemic racism is not in Indian River County School District. Well, 55 years with a desegregation order still standing on you, I beg to differ. People talk about religious. Some of the most atrocities ever done against African Americans were done from churches. So this policy, I would love for it to stay because it's definitive, but if it's gonna go, Dr. Jones has done an awesome job. But I also believe that it could be even better. I refuse to allow you to define me without me being at the table. If we accept what Dr. Jones has, it has to be that we are at the table, that we are part of what's going on, that is done right. Do not define me without me being at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Kevin Browning, and then Edward Spencer.
Good evening, Chairman Dr. Jones, or should I say Chairwoman? Chair. Dr. Moore, Superintendent, board members, awesome presentations tonight. I like what the carpenter guy, I shouldn't call him the carpenter guy, but what he talked about. I bought a shed from Vero Beach High School about 23 years ago for $1,500, and it's still standing. So they do some good work, and it should be something we should have. Now, I'd like to thank you, board, for your efforts at Unity, and I believe that I and many Indian River County residents would be elated when the board can get back to the business of student safety, facilities, like the lady mentioned a few minutes ago, proper wages for employees, school grades, closing the achievement gap, and setting goals to be the #1 performing district in the state. Now, let me apologize right now for what you may hear me say. But we do want to be the most, the top performing district in the state. But what we heard last week was kind of offensive and appalling. I'm a person of faith, and I don't want equity in this town. And we don't need a racial equity policy or an equity policy. Now, that kind of reminded me of a few things, but more specifically, there was this movie called Django. In the movie, the slaver said to the black man, "Didn't I give you my last apple?" as if he did him a favor. That is just sickening and so wrong. It's ridiculous. So I invite you right now, if you have those feelings, please take off your hood. Show us who you are. And I'll tell you who the rest of us are in here. We're brothers and sisters of Indian River County of all faiths, races, and walks of life who intend to stand together for all kids. We need the policy that says we support each and every child in this district, and that includes with racial equity, equality, and everything else that might bother you in the middle of the night. There are so many positive things going on. Please, let's protect all children and get to the business of making this district #1. And like Mr. Brown said, everybody needs a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. And our last speaker on this part of citizen input is Edward Spencer.
Good afternoon. It's first time up here. I'm a local pastor, part of the Pastor Association, part of the NAACP. I have a preschool that's over in Gifford. And what I notice is it's always decision made about us without us. So I'm here to ask, if you're going to make a decision about us, make sure one of us is at the table so you can understand us. So any decision without us wouldn't be prevalent to us or for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board members, any responses from citizen input? Ms. Berenborg?
Sure. Mr. Bruner, vocational ed. Where's Mr. Bruner? Did he leave? I was really impressed by his program that he had, because when I first came on the board, I asked why we didn't have carpentry and all this other stuff. When you look around and you see the trees being plowed down and houses going up, why aren't we doing that? You know, there have been some things brought to attention about how that has changed and how different construction companies bring on their employees and things like that, but he makes a good point. We need to look back at that. Julia White. Thank you for speaking. The library is going to be really fun place. You know, I was excited that they could eat in the library, so I think kids will want to go there and hang out and do things, you know, that they need to do to improve, meet as groups and things like that. It's great. The LED lights in the parking lots have been a concern. I know hopefully the superintendent will address that. The seats, I took pictures of it and texted it to him. He knows. Late at night, he got all these pictures, and he went, "What's this?" And I said, "We need to talk about this." But he has assured me that's on his radar immediately, so I was happy to hear that. And all of the rest of you that spoke very passionately about different things that we need to see and view, I appreciate that very much. We don't make decisions up here lightly. We need input. We need people to come and talk. Feel free to pick up the phone, call us, or make an appointment, or let us know where to show up and speak to people. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barefoot?
Well, I wish that program that he covered all the trades was available when I went to school. I'd have probably chosen one of those and not some of the other things I've done over the years. It was impressive, but I have to say, in Indian River County, the programs that we do have focused on the trades are excellent. It's just a matter of having more young people take advantage of some of the opportunities that are presented. I can remember listening to a lot of discussion around the welding program. A friend of mine's a general manager of Mullinex Ford, and he talks to me about 8 or 9 young people that work in the 2 afternoons a week and then come in on Saturdays and work alongside master mechanics. And he would tell you that these kids, after a couple of years, can get a job in the service department of any automotive dealer in Indian River County. So there are opportunities out there. Whether or not we push them hard enough or encourage kids, we probably don't, but what we have is pretty good. And whether they could be better, things can always be better. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and this might be an idea, and maybe we do it to some degree, somebody suggested on the website that we put some of the facilities-related projects on the website, maybe in the district website in a separate category, and offer the opportunities to provide funding, $10, $15, doesn't matter, restricted to a specific project that is of interest to you and or your families. I thought that was a very good idea, and it's your money. I mean, it is the taxpayers' money that are funding these facilities. It's a separate budget, and if we can keep people appraised of the status of many of these projects, I think that would be great. So thank you for your suggestions.
Ms. Rosario, any comments?
I think that Mrs. Barenborg and Mr. Barefoot and I are probably all going to say the same thing on the same topics. The idea of construction and carpentry, we had a construction program here that was removed just a few years ago. And we were told at the time that there wasn't a need for it. And therefore it was removed. But clearly there is an interest in it, and clearly there is support from the board. So I would love to have a further conversation with Dr. Moore and the board on how we can somehow revisit including somewhere in our school district carpentry and construction as a vocational and tech program. The Treasure Coast Builders Association has shared an interest in partnering with us on that. Certainly the ideas of building veterans affordable housing and Habitat for Humanity, some of those ideas that were shared tonight are amazing ideas, and I think that we should definitely look into that. Ms. White, I love the crowdsourcing idea. Love it. I don't know if we can do it. Mr. Fagan will definitely guide us in that direction. I don't, obviously talk with the superintendent and the board, but I love that idea. We have so many special projects that need to be addressed, and it really is a great starting point, at least for us. I love the idea of a landing page. So sorry I didn't come up with it first, but it's fantastic. So kudos to you for sharing that with us. Hopefully that'll guide our future conversations in that. And I'm going to shoot this over to Dr. Moore for him to address. There were some concerns that I heard that we have removed systems and programs from our student code of conduct, eliminating correction and compassion or care for students' well-being. I did not see that at all. Can you please address that? Dr. Moore, sorry.
So I would prefer to have a number of comments that I want to make at the end, including
Absolutely.
that statement.
Perfect.
But when we're all done.
Thank you.
Dr. Plaska, anything?
Sure. At this point, I think I'm reverberating what most people have said, but I definitely want to look at and see what we can do to support the trade schools and increase enrollment in that.
I don't think your mic is working.
There we go.
Testing.
There we go. It's working now. No, I was just saying that I definitely want to support the trade schools locally and try to improve enrollment in them and hopefully scholarships as well. And as far as I'm aware, there was a number of things said about the code of conduct policy. No services were being removed. There's really, so there was a lot of, I think, miscommunication that I heard, but look forward to your response.
Okay, Ms. Barrymore has one more thing, and then I'll wrap it up before Dr. Moore.
Yeah, he did mention plumbing too, and having just had several plumbers at my house, man, those kids could really make a good living coming out of school. So we need to look at plumbing too, please.
Just a few things. The citizen input tonight, thank you very much. We appreciate the respect that you show. We used to have one of those at our high school in Illinois where they came in and the house was built and then it would be for sale in the community. It was a great thing. Actually, St. Petersburg High School just did their whole football field through the alumni, band and football paid for, because they were so interested in making sure that was continued at that time. We heard a lot about racial equity policy tonight, and obviously if you look at the agenda, I was the one who brought up another policy in case that other one is repealed, but just for the public to know. Currently, the school district Indian River County racial equity policy is in the public hearing window with the action to repeal on April 24th. Understanding and listening to the community we serve, I have concerns regarding the removal of this policy without having a policy of substantive meaning and value to replace it with. If you watch the workshop today, we had a good discussion on this. It was a good discussion, what a board should do, and they give input, and where do we go with this? And it was 4-1 to say, go ahead and move forward. I knew when this policy was put forward that it was not the answer. We had very little time to do this because we needed to get that on the agenda 1 week ahead of time, and there was just 2 weeks between meetings this time. During this revision phase, I will work with Dr. Safdie on looking at fellow board members' input and welcoming feedback from students, parents, guardians, and community members. And Dr. Moore, I think it's very, very important that if we really want to have a commitment to this district and its mission, that we listen to all of our people in this community. If you look at the dais right in front of you, it says transforming education to inspire and empower all students to maximize their full potential. So while I look at this with Dr. Safdie and looking at feedback, I will do just that. I will listen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just kind of want to make a few remarks following what board members said is, and equally as important, what our community said. When you look at our CTE programs, unfortunately the gentleman left. I would love to have staff talk to him, and I will have staff, Ms. Emerson, follow up with them. We go through a process every 3 or 4 years in which you look at all of the career technical education programs that are being offered. And we must validate to the state before they give us money, is it a high-wage, high-skilled job? They will not fund programs. They will not give us the money for programs in which once you complete the program, there's no job for them to receive. We just finished CTE month, and one of the things that I've said all throughout CTE month is one of the best kept secrets in this county is CTE programming. We have nursing, we have welding, we have culinary, we have technology, we have biotech, aerospace, automotive, business management, digital design, digital video tech, drafting, marketing management, web design. We're adding HVAC, practical nursing. So we're looking at, can we ensure when our students receive these programs, they can in fact walk into a high skill, high wage job. So as we go through this, and we just finished it 2 years ago, we'll do it again in the coming year or the upcoming year. We'll continue to look at programming in order to ensure we are offering those programs. Doesn't keep us from not offering electives, but then the funding comes straight from the general fund versus the Perkins funding. So it is something that we continue to look at. But the expansion of what we've done in CTE over the course of the last 3 years is one of the things that I celebrate the most. And you all know Ms. Emerson doesn't let any grass grow under her feet. It's really looking at programming and expanding programming to meet the needs of all students. The seating, in terms of Sebastian River, we are in the process of having that corrected. The board coming up over the summer will look at its capital plan and what we will approve, which is a absolutely wonderful opportunity to see how we make magic happen with the dollars, the limited dollars that we have from the state to maintain campuses. And one of the things we probably should do is go on a field trip and look at the quality of buildings that we currently have. And this is, I don't take any credit for this because it would be wrong for me to do so. But the quality of our campuses, the upkeep of our campuses is really above reproach. It really, honestly is. We need to maximize technology. We do need to have a process in place, and I think we do, and we obviously can expand upon, to listen to the community on how we are using those funds to create world-class facilities to produce world-class instruction. So just very proud of the work that we've been able to do. Mr. Bass, in partnership with his team, and Mr. Fagan are doing some extremely innovative, efficient things to give to our students things they've never had. And we will continue to do that as we get ready to bring our next capital plan to the budget. And I would include everyone to be involved. The Code of Conduct is going to be presented tonight. But let me say this, the day that it doesn't provide opportunities for us to meet with students and provide interventions for them is the day I'm out. It's just not how I was raised. And this Code of Conduct may not have specific programs listed, but by no means or no measure are we walking away from the opportunities to connect with children, help them understand the consequences of their behaviors, and help them identify which behaviors lead to success. We will not walk away from that. Not on my watch. We will make sure what we're doing in our schools in terms of helping and supporting students is in fact allowing them to understand this is the maladaptive behavior that was present. I understand what I did, and then I'm provided the appropriate level of support in time to replace that maladaptive behavior with an appropriate behavior. That's just what we're called to do. For me, the purpose, the impact, the power of what public education, which is part of my leadership story you've heard me tell 100 times, was coming to that realization. What groups of adults could do in a school in which every single student had been expelled. But when the adults were unwavering in their belief that I'm going to connect and build a relationship because I believe this student can turn his life around, powerful things happened. My observation of those adults changed the trajectory of my life. That is all I'm called to do, is to replicate that kind of environment for a total school system. That's what we need to be about. I'm completely echoing some of the things that have been said. But the board creates policy. And the board should be listening and is listening to its community in the creation of policy. So as the board referenced today, there are opportunities to continue to problem solve. I know I will work with board to bring back something and for it to be considered. But let me be abundantly clear. The policy that's up for repeal, there are things in it in which will cause additional consequences for this school system if we don't take the appropriate measures. That was my recommendation 2 weeks ago. It still holds true in terms of being my recommendation, but would encourage us to engage in the conversation. If there are opportunities to create something that allows us to be responsive to our community, then that's the work that we need to do, as hard as it may be. And if we can get to that particular point, that would be a good thing. So those are my remarks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other remarks, board members?
Plumbing.
Plumbing, okay. Our next item is approval of consent agenda items as amended. I would like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda items as amended.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Rosario, second. Ms. Berenborg, any discussion? A vote on approve of consent agenda items as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, vote carries 5-0.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd just like to acknowledge the grant donors that we received several grants that we just approved. St. John's Water Management Grant for Gifford Middle School. Fellsmere Frog Festival donated to Sebastian River High School and to Fellsmere Elementary School. Chick-fil-A.
Wait just a minute, thank you. I didn't know they were all good. We'll hold for just a minute so everyone can clear who wishes to clear.
Hopefully it stopped raining.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned Chick-fil-A, everybody headed to Chick-fil-A.
Yes. I told them to go to Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A had a micro grant that they gave to Sebastian River High School.
That's political. It's holy chicken.
Citrus PTA donated. Mid-Coast Tire Service donated to Citrus. Kate O'Neill, one of our media specialists, donated to her own school, and it was recognized because it was a significant amount of money. Jay McLaughlin for Beachland PTA. Grand Harbor donated for health services. So I mention that because all of these different groups are donating to our schools, and our schools are benefiting. And so I just wanted to make sure we read it into the record. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berenborg, and thank you to all of the donations. And thank you to our two grant people that are working hard on our grants. Okay, at this time, we are on items pulled from consent to action. If there are any items that were moved from consent to action, I will recognize the board member who pulled the item to review. After the item has been presented, I will then call for a motion. All right, the first one is 7E, and that was Ms. Rosario on amended, the information on the amendment of legal services. And just to remind, I do have a couple people talking on code of conduct, but that is not until 9 a.m., and I will try not to forget. Okay, we need a first and a second for this item. I'm sorry, my fault. Go ahead, Ms. Rosario, the floor is yours.
So I pulled this item, number one, because it's not a consent item. It's not a regular routine item that should be on consent. In addition, I pulled it because I do not believe that that this board member was given enough information. Backup was not provided in order to justify paying $100,000 more.
I'm supposed to present
Is there something? Did I miss something?
I don't. No, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay. Paying $100,000 more for legal services. Not that it's not important, not that it's not needed, but that this board member was not provided with the information to make the best decision possible at this time. So therefore, I pulled this from consent so that we can, Madam Chair, as I have the floor, I make a motion to move to postpone the question to the next meeting, April 24th.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Okay, motion fails, not having a second. Okay, our next one is 8A on personnel.
You still, Madam Chair, you still, point of order.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You still have to vote on this.
I'm sorry.
Now an action item.
Okay, so all in favor, would you repeat your motion, please? Ms. Rosario?
No, we failed our motion.
It's the main motion, it's on there.
To approve it.
So do we have a motion to approve as it is listed on our consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I wasn't given backup information, but we all meet with the superintendent. Mine's Monday morning. That was one of the first things I asked him about because $100,000 raised a red flag. When he explained it to us and said, we've paid more than that in the past because we do it for piecemeal, lots of different law firms, and this is the one law firm that's going to be able to handle it all. And I understood that, and that's why he had to bring the item to us. I said, okay, it's semantics, so I get it. So I was fine with it because I did get that information, so thank you.
Any other discussion?
I'll just, you can go first. You can go first.
Well, Mr. Barefoot, go ahead.
I was just going to say that just because we were authorizing it doesn't mean it's going to be spent.
Right.
It's there if needed. And if something crops up in where time is of the essence, can't call it necessarily a special board meeting for every item. And if there's not enough money left in the original budget, this $100,000 will provide the administration the opportunity to address that thing in a timely fashion. Hopefully, we won't need to spend it, but it's there if needed.
Dr. Posca?
Yeah, at first glance, it almost appears like we're giving them a raise. However, clearly, this is not only for salaried work, but it's also for litigation. We've essentially used up the amount of finance we expected to have around for litigation. So if there's any additional amount needed, we're going to have to approve something like this. So I support it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor then of approving of the amendments for legal service agreement, say aye.
Aye. No.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1 to move forward with that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Just a point of order. The items that have been pulled from consent, I would like the opportunity to have staff or myself present the items. There are individuals who may be tuning in for the first time. So although a board member pulls them for discussion, which is absolutely the way of doing it, for the benefit or full understanding for our community, I would really appreciate the opportunity to have the item presented just as it was during workshop, and then be able to ask any questions or respond to any concerns that may be there.
Okay, so you're saying after Ms. Rosario, who pulls the next item, you would like to present?
Yes, this is my recommendation. This is my item that now belongs to the board. So I think it needs to be presented and then discussed.
Got it. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. All right, our next item that was pulled was 8A, personnel recommendations. Ms. Rosario, the floor is yours.
Thank you. There is a personnel recommendation that was presented to us today of a new position. Again, this is not a consent agenda. This is not routine. This new position, I'm going to give it over to Dr. Moore so he can explain, but this new position, well, there's history behind it, so I'll let him explain this position.
So thank you, Ms. Rosario. Mr. Bass, can you present the item, please?
Through the chair. This is actually a position that's already in place. We have a retirement of an individual who's worked for the district for 48 years, and the change that we made on this job description was raising the pay at the pro-tech level from a pay grade C to a pay grade B, which would start the base about $5,000 more. Currently, the individual is there due to all the years of experience, has outranged the range on his salary. And so this would put it in line with the other individuals, this new person that we hire, and also give us the opportunity to attract someone with the skill set that we need.
All right. Any discussion or questions from the board?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, if I may, that on the actual board docs, on the actual description, usually there is a red line and then, so that wasn't there, which is one of the reasons why I brought it forward when I questioned about it, because it doesn't seem like there was anything here that was new or old in terms of the red line or the green, adding it in.
We apologize for that. It's oversight on the format we sent you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, board members? Okay, we need a motion. Ms. Rosario, do you want to make a motion on this?
I make a motion to approve the amended personnel recommendations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, we had discussion.
Yeah, can I ask, what
Yes, go
was
ahead.
the amendment?
It's listed on our board docs as amended personnel recommendations.
Oh, gotcha. I
So
thought you
I'm-
maybe were further
No.
amending. Okay. Got it. Nothing further.
Okay, all in favor of approving the personnel recommendations stated in 8A?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Rosario and Dr. Moore. All right, our next one, we do have a couple of people who wish to speak about 9A, the Code of Conduct, so we'll do citizen input at this time. First person is Jennifer Pippin.
Good evening again. I was on the Code of Conduct Committee, and I attended and participated in all 3 of the meetings. The first meeting, my group and I, we had a high school principal. The second meeting, we had a middle school principal. And then the third meeting, we had district staff. So it was really great for us to get the input from different entities when we were making recommendations and changes to the Code of Conduct from what we saw. And we suggested to follow the laws to not have any more restorative justice, restorative circles, restorative practices, or social emotional learning. And we changed all of those to conflict resolution per the new state statute. So a lot of the changes that you see in the Code of Conduct where it's marked off, it's following the state statutes. And again, in talking to the middle school principals and the high school principals and the district staff aligning that, you'll see a lot of those changes in the Code of Conduct. And I also wanted to speak about the Guardian program that was launched after the 2018 school shooting in Parkland, named after one of its victims. The program wanted to have a state law that required an armed person to guard every public and charter school in the state. That can be district police, local police, security contractors, or under the program, a school guardian. In order to become a school guardian, one needs to pass a psychological and drug screening and complete 144 hours of the training. So by law, it's required to have the school resource officers or the Guardian program, but it doesn't mean that we can't have both. So after the recent events at Vero Beach High School and the problems that we've had throughout the county, it's actually throughout the state for the long period of time, it may be something that we could look into, and that kind of goes into the Code of Conduct. And also, with the $14 million that we have allocated for the district for mental health, maybe we can look into deans or getting some more of these guardians, because right now we have safety, but it may help the school resource officers, and I hope you did, speak to Milo Thornton and some of the school resource officers here in this room today, or that are on campuses, to see if the guardianship program would be something that would be, worth looking into to add to the Code of Conduct for more safety for our students. I know metal detectors have been brought up as well. I don't remember much discussion in the past 3 years that I've been coming to school board meetings that being discussed. So, maybe not with this Code of Conduct, but in the future, that's something that could be discussed, again, with the recent events and, guns brought to school multiple times this past school year that may be beneficial. And finally, with the dress code, I said keep it simple, kind of made a joke about it. The 4 Bs, no boobs, no belly, no butt, no boxers, and that's easy for our dress code. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pippin. Next speaker is Tammy Bogart.
Good evening. First, I want to begin, after reviewing the draft of the new Code of Conduct, I want to thank the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council members. I was thrilled with what I was reading, especially changes to the bullying policy. However, there were a couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention so that this policy may be changed or tweaked just a bit. Specifically, the wording says all reports of bullying will be taken seriously and thoroughly investigated in a timely manner. With parents that I'm talking to, I have friends who have children who are being bullied in school right now, and I'll give you an example. A friend of mine has a child in middle school who was videotaped when he was in the bathroom. That video was then shared on Snapchat. The school administrators did nothing. This was going on for a year. Needless to say, after it was shared on Snapchat to a wide array of students, they made his life miserable. And it has taken a year for her to finally get, and for him to finally get, this taken seriously. So my first thought is, can there be a means or a vehicle where parents can escalate a concern when it's not being heard by the school administration? Secondly, I noticed that our means for filling out a form, if we made it a little easier, maybe students or parents would feel more comfortable filling out forms and submitting them anonymously. Right now, there's not even a fillable form online. If there was a fillable form that they could fill out and then just click submit, and it would go straight to the school, or possibly a hotline. Martin County has a hotline, and it's really simple. Parents or students call their school, and they just punch in. There's basically a separate voicemail box to anonymously report bullying incidents. They call the school, punch in like pound 188, and they're able to leave a message anonymously. Just a means to make it a little bit easier for these incidents to be reported. As of now, you either have to take it to the administration or you have to put it in a drop box, which the reality is somebody can see you. There's cameras everywhere. So just a means to make it a little bit easier for parents to submit these bullying forms to the schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Rosario, this is your item 9A, Code of Conduct.
Thank you. I pulled this again because it is, as I mentioned, it is not a regular routine item. I would like to just begin with the anonymous, what Ms. Bogart mentioned. This is something that I have been requesting for months, and I was told it was very simple and easy, and we are months and months later, and we still have not received information as to whether this anonymous reporting system has been created or not. Dr. Moore?
So if anyone wants to go back and watch my presentation and pay attention to it, I did highlight that information in which you can report anonymously on the device in which I just covered. So I did, in fact, just give a presentation on that. In addition, I also want to say Fortify, which is also part of that presentation, is a anonymous reporting app. It is on every device in our school district that is in the hands of children. There are posters plastered throughout the school. Can't speak specifically as to what's happening in Martin County, but students are using that application in ways in which they've never used it before. We had a concern reported today about a student who possibly was on, was it sick or was on drugs or something. That allows us to go through problem solve and say, is there any additional support for having that? So we do have that in that form. in the presentation that I gave this afternoon. You go to contact us, you click on that, and you have the opportunity. It clearly says if you would, if you want to be anonymous, if you don't want to be contacted, you don't have to fill out the name and the email address. You can just fill out the concern that you have, and you can link it to any specific office, including myself, which gives me the opportunity to look on a daily basis or whenever I receive them. It is a way to communicate directly with me, whether it be through email for a return call or anonymously. We also have, in terms of follow-up, Mr. Seymour's office. For those of you who don't know Mr. Seymour, he is relentless. He is calling parents on Saturday. He was doing that this Saturday. He does not go home on Friday unless he's cleared his mail, meaning he's returned and advocated for the appropriate level of support for all children and all families in our system. So that's just a little additional information I felt is appropriate.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do apologize because I heard Fortify. I didn't hear everything that you just mentioned right now. So maybe it was a quick little mention, but you certainly took much more time to explain it now, so I appreciate that. So good. So now we have an anonymous reporting system, and now we have Fortify. Let's see if people will put it to action and what happens from there. So good. Thank you. At this point, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over again back to Dr. Moore to introduce, I guess, Ms. Dampierre for the presentation of the Code of Conduct.
Thank you, Ms. Rosario. Through the chair, since the item was pulled, I think the most appropriate response is to present it as it should appropriately be presented, and that is under the leadership of Ms. Dampierre and team.
Through the chair, this evening I will provide an overview of recommended revisions for the 2023-24 Code of Student Conduct. Based on the presentation this morning, I'll provide a brief overview. Stakeholder feedback is important to us, and as so, we provided numerous opportunities to get feedback from our various stakeholders on the four focus areas, which we knew that cell phones, bullying, vaping, and discipline expectations. We conducted 3 community feedback sessions to solicit feedback from our community. Also, we had over 55 students participate and give feedback during the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, as well as we solicited feedback from our principals, as well as our union president. And during board briefings, I reviewed the recommended changes with each board member and asked for additional feedback. The summary of changes throughout the Code of Conduct, we refined to increase clarity. We also amended behaviors and corrective interventions. This was to make sure that it was aligned with some of the changes that you will see and hear about today. And to ensure consistency of expectations and procedures, specific guidelines for bullying, cell phones, and vaping are now outlined specifically in our Student Code of Conduct. I just want to reiterate that we will continue. We started this out. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, but we will make sure that we reiterate school-wide expectations of student behaviors, as well as character education is going to be continued to be taught throughout the year for our students, and we'll be highlighting the focus of the month and teaching that expectation through our school counselors, as well as promoting that information through our social media and our PIO officer. Bullying guidelines, we added a statement of no tolerance for bullying in the school district of Indian River County. Also, all reports will be taken seriously, and we went over all of this information and reviewed these new expectations with our principal. Also, a plan must be in place to protect the victim. We wanted to make sure that the victim felt like they were going to be protected during and after the investigation. Administrative school staff, students, and bus drivers are trained on bullying every year. That's a part of our beginning of the year procedures. We create videos, We also do onboarding for our students, and I think board members asked earlier today, what about the students who come in within the middle of the year? There are videos that is a process where the students, when they log on to Focus, they have to go through, they can't even log on. They have to go through all of the procedures for bullying, and we'll make sure as far as the expectations, that is added as a process as well. The bullying investigation timeline that administrators must adhere to for all reports and bullying, we included that timeline now in the student code of conduct. Principals are trained on that. There are state guidelines as far as the timeline. Got behind? So used to having it. There are expectations that we have to, any incident of report of bullying, we must make contact with the parents within 24 hours. And there's a guideline that investigations must be conducted within 10 days by 10 days. And from days 11 through 15, outcome letters must be sent home to the parents of the victim and the perpetrator, as well as the Hope Scholarship. We must give parents, whether it's substantiated or non-substantiated, a copy of the Hope Scholarship outline so they can take advantage of that if they would like to. We also have new cell phone guidelines. And this was important to have consistency throughout the district. We wanted to make sure to ensure a positive learning environment that is free from distractions. Grades K through 8, cell phones should be out of sight and silenced from the time they enter campus until the end of the school day. Grades 9 through 12. We have cell phones must be on silent during school hours and out of sight during class time. And for unique situations in classrooms, they may be used for activities, and prior approval from the principal, from the teacher must be adhered to. We have what we call a progression of discipline here for the minor misuse of cell phone misuse. An office discipline referral will be submitted for all offenses with consequences assigned, such as, and they're varied through each level, detention, aspire, all toss, or out-of-school suspension. We really wanted to send a message about our major cell phone violations that are considered serious offenses will not be tolerated, such as recording fights, cyberbullying, recording, transmitting, and sending images of students or staff without consent. That's very important that the students are taught that that will not be tolerated. An office discipline referral will be submitted with an automatic 10-day suspension, automatic, as well as any illegal activities will be reported to law enforcement. And all of this information will be a part of the training for all of our stakeholders in the school. So it's not just, we're just gonna give this information and not train and review the expectations of the correct expectations in the school. And SRD will be assigned full-time to help the schools with cyber investigations or any other areas that they need for the 2023-24 school year. New vaping guidelines were added with specific consequences for tobacco and drug use. Of course, we had this in our code of conduct. We started with the law. We wanted to reiterate that and make sure that was pointed out. For our tobacco, we have a progression of corrective interventions that were added. Each corrective intervention that's outlined includes a referral to law enforcement where they give a civil citation where our students will be referred to SAC, which is the Substance Awareness Council, where the parents participate in an orientation, as well as students actually participate in several modules and they get a certificate of completion. We really want to make sure that it's not repeated, that we have some interventions in place to ensure that our students are getting the help and assistance that they need. For our more serious drug use, we have offenses. Students are assigned out-of-school suspension with a referral to law enforcement. We really want to make sure that along with consequences, that we also provide some assistance for our families as well as some supports and interventions for our students. So that's the goal. We want to make sure, although we've tightened up with our consequences, we will make sure that students are trained as well as our administrators, all of our stakeholders, and that will be our next steps. Our next steps will be to update the code of conduct, training for all stakeholders, and then we will update our policies. We have 2 policies, which are wireless communication device, as well as bullying and harassment. Those 2 policies will come forward for us with recommended changes to the board. We also are going to align with, we want to make sure that they're aligned with the recommended changes for the 2023-24 school year. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
So just to summarize, thank you, Pam, Ms. Dampier, for doing that for the second time today. We truly appreciate it. The item that's in front of you, board, is to send this out so we can have it for public hearing at an upcoming school board meeting. This does in fact allow us to have a code of conduct that keeps the flexibility of school sites to provide appropriate level of interventions and services of support to children, while at the same time, at its most severe level, those disruptions that are violating the law, that we're clearly defining the appropriate steps in order to ensure everyone understands the expectation within our schools. So it has been a long process to create a community standard, as I'm calling it, associated with our code of conduct. But I think that is what we have in front of us right now.
Okay, thank you. We've heard from Dr. Moore and Ms. Dampier. Board members, questions or discussion before we have a motion? Ms. Berenborg.
Sure. I'd like to bring up 3 things. First of all, I was going to pull the item 2 because I think this is a major thing that we really should have as action instead of consent. As far as metal detectors, we haven't discussed them here on the dais because we have safety and security meetings that are in the shade for good reason. And so I'm not going to say anything about it, but just know that we have those meetings. We just recently had one. We're going to be upping it to 4 a year.
Through the chair, 3 in this first year, given the timing in which
Okay.
we decide to have them. But
Okay. So, because I think that's important, that board members are discussing safety and security a lot, not just once a year. Cell phone policy, vaping, bullying. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am getting lots of good feedback this week from teachers thanking us for this cell phone policy change. And some of them wish we'd be a little stronger with it in the high school. That's why I said what I said today in the workshop. But we'll see how this goes. And hopefully we'll start to see some changes because I think part of our bullying problem, I know part of our bullying problem is the phones. Absolutely. And anyway, I thank you for listening to everybody that gave input on this. And I sat with a principal at one of the times that you met, and I heard that it works at one of the schools when you crack down. So if it can work at one school, it can work at the other schools.
Thank you. Mr. Barefoot?
Nothing to add.
Dr. Posca?
I'll just say I definitely support the changes being made to the code of conduct. I think it's an excellent start, and obviously when we roll out a new policy, things don't just end there. There's a continuous process of improvement and listening to feedback, and ultimately there may be more changes that need to be made in the future. And if we don't make any, that's certainly evidence of failure. But I think this is a great first step and a big improvement that's going to help our kids to be safer and have a much better learning environment for not only the students, but also the teachers and the rest of the staff.
Just to add a couple things.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I?
Oh, yes, go ahead. I was going to let you end with it, but that's okay.
Oh, go ahead, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Since you pulled it, I thought that would be appropriate. When we look at anything that's new, the one thing that I did say is that we have to be here to support our teachers and our principals. Because when you put in new policy, it's tough at the beginning, but then if you're there and you hit it that first week, I think we can do it. It's just making sure that everyone understands what the expectations are and that we are there to support them. Everyone has a right to come on every school campus and have a safe learning environment. And I said at the very beginning, we're not talking about doing certain programs for major disruptions, fighting drugs, disrupting a school campus. It just cannot happen at our schools. So I just attended one of the meetings, but I listened to the parents and the principals and some teachers at that meeting, and this was good work. This was good work, and I just want the schools to know that we are here for them. I want the parents to know that we are here for them, the community to know that we are here for them, and that we will do our best every day, make sure our students are safe. Rosario.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dampierre and your team for working really hard on making these changes. I also received good feedback from a lot of people. A lot of teachers actually said that all of this is really good. But if, what I've mentioned earlier, we can have all the policies in the world and the procedures in the world, but if it's not followed through, and if there is no consistent support, it will be useless. So we really need to make sure that everything that is in here is actually adhered to. Earlier today, I encourage anyone who has not watched the earlier workshop to watch the earlier workshop, because we talked a little bit more in depth about some of these specific items. One of the things that we discussed was the word recidivism on page 27 that was requested to be removed and replaced, but I don't see that here, so. There it goes.
That has been updated. There was an amendment that updated that.
So what would the language be then?
We just moved the word, we just deleted the word recidivism. And it just made sense if we, it's on page 20.
So then it would read, the program is designed to reduce related to behavioral infractions. I think we need to, what was mentioned earlier was to say, the program is designed to reduce, what was mentioned earlier? Repeat misbehaviors.
Yeah.
Or something like that, you can.
Just for therapeutic and conflict resolution interventions designed to help increase student, that is what it says. That was the change that was being recommended. It took out recidivism and put in conflict resolution.
Can't see it.
No, we're looking at a different thing. The second bullet on page 27.
I am looking at
It reads, the program is
fourth
designed to reduce, so then if that's the case,
Okay.
it would say to reduce conflict resolution. That doesn't
All right.
make any sense.
Well, it makes sense where I was reading it, but.
It was amended to as follows.
Thank
The
you.
program is designed to reduce repeat serious behaviors that adversely impact the educational environment related to behavioral infractions.
Oh my God, that's, oh, fine. That's so, just misbehaviors. Okay. Unless board members want something else, but okay.
That's fine.
Very wordy. The other thing I wanted to mention on page 23, which we didn't talk about before, and that's fine, but I just want to clarify for those who are watching and who this may affect them, but the information on vaping and a student not being able to be in possession, obviously, of a vaping pen or a vaping device, THC, CBD, marijuana. This does not address medical marijuana with legal prescriptions. We have a policy, and obviously it's law, that if you have a legal prescription for that, that there's a process for that. This does not address that, the legal prescription of for medicinal purposes.
That is correct. There is a process, and the parents, we don't administer that.
No, I know, but we have it in the policy, in a different policy, so I just want to make sure in case anybody is listening. Something else very minor that you may notice when you finalize the document, the lettering in the blue is very dark. So like if you, I'm on the same page, 23, do you see the lettering in the big?
When you take track changes off, it disappears. It's just the colors.
That's fine. I mean, it's very minor. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding the language for the Hope Scholarship. And the cell phone use in there, the inclusion of cell phones for cyberbullying, and that is it. So I am excited because I hope that this really makes a difference.
Thank you. Okay, this time we have had the item presented by Dr. Moore, Ms. Dampierre. Ms. Rosario, this was your motion, so I'll call for a motion.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Code of Student Conduct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Can I just make a quick clarification? The motion is, as is in the agenda, correct, to approve setting the public hearing date?
Public hearing,
For
right.
April 24th?
I was going to correct that.
Thank you.
So, okay, great.
We got a little excited, sorry.
Should I amend that?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd like to make should I amend that?
Well, is everybody on the same page that that's what you,
Yes.
That's
the
what we're
motion
voting
is
on.
and what you voted on? Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that clarification, just to make sure. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, now we go into discussion items. And Ms. Rosario, you had one for citizen input.
Okay, give me 1 second, let me put this away here. Too many things out. Sorry. While I get myself organized, I put citizen input on for discussion because I want us to discuss this. We had, I know, that was my introduction. We talked about this at our last meeting. I don't think we spent enough time on this. This was an issue that we discussed a year ago, almost a year ago as well, I think, approximately. And it's regarding our policy on citizen input. So our policy says that we should have, that persons may speak up to 3 minutes at the beginning of the business meeting during citizen input as indicated on the order of business, and for up to 3 minutes to each action agenda item during the action agenda and each board member discussion item as indicated on the order of business. So the question here is as indicated on the order of business. This was a question that was raised when Dr. Schiff was on the board as well, and I did agree with her that there was a citizen at the time, and I wish I can remember exactly when, it wasn't long ago, who spoke to or wanted to speak to different items that were not on the printed agenda of the orders of the day at the moment that they walked through those doors. Mrs. Shattuck said that wasn't, at first she said it wasn't true. I mean, she said that the citizen can speak to it. Mrs. Berenborg mentioned, and this is my memory, so if anyone remembers this better, please refresh my memory. Mrs. Berenborg was the chair, and she pointed to wording in our policy that actually says on the orders of the day, as printed on the orders of the day, or the language that's in the policy. And at that point, Mrs. Shattuck said, now that I see it, Mrs. Shattuck was fairly new with us. And then Mrs. Shattuck said, yes, as I read it now, that is indeed correct, as it's printed on the orders of the day. So when a citizen comes to the door to fill out a citizen form, they're here no later than 5:45. That is the last time that we have on our policy to receive citizen input forms. At 5:45, they do not know whether a particular board member, anyone here, is going to add an item for discussion or an item for action or move a particular item. Although the moving really doesn't matter because they're speaking to a particular item anyway. But it's really those items that are being added. if an item is not printed on the agenda, how can someone put that on their citizen input form? And that's what's been happening, and I'm all for citizen comment. I'm 100% in favor of hearing citizens, but if we're going to be consistent with one, we need to be consistent with all of them. So that's my first reasoning, for bringing this up for a discussion. The other reason I wanted to bring this up for discussion was because our form and our policy are pretty consistent where it says, please fill out this form hold on, let me get there. I think it says one form per item that you're going to speak to. Now, of course, I can't find it, but it should be on the form. It says, please, it should say something, please fill out one form, one item per form, which makes sense because if you want to speak to 5 different items, then you should fill out 5 different forms for a couple of reasons. Number one, as the chair, it's important for you to be able to organize who's going to speak to what item during the orders of the day as we move forward. So you can kind of sort those out on your desk accordingly that way. You can put them in numerical order, obviously, or however way you put them to sort who speaks first and who doesn't. And there's one item for one person at a time on the form. The other reason why I think that's very important for us to be consistent with is so that for minutes. And if later on there is a confusion and there are multiple things checked off on a form by one person, and we're using that same form for the purposes of minutes, we can confuse Mrs. Esplin, for example. If someone requests for a public record of what one person spoke to, Mrs. Esplin would then be very confused because according to the citizen input form, this one person spoke to multiple items. Which did the person speak to first, or was one item only spoken to and not the other one? So those kinds of things are very important, and if we're going to be consistent, we need to be consistent with everyone. So.
Thank you. And I agree. I believe everyone should have the right to speak when he or she wishes to speak. Now, we had 2 want to speak to the Code of Conduct 9A, saying I wish to speak as an action item is printed on the action agenda, but it wasn't on the action agenda when it was pulled from consent to action orders of the day, so after the meeting started. And I think we had something like that last week. And what I did add through the approval of the superintendent, because I didn't want that to happen, if you want to speak at a certain time, you can speak at citizen input, then you can speak on action, but if you don't know the orders are going to be pulled or changed, I don't want to set anybody up for that. So what I did say today, and I think it's fair, if a consent item is moved to an action item when you come to the podium, you may speak at that time or defer to speak during the presentation of the action item. And then we don't set up anybody saying, well, I didn't know it was going to be pulled to action. I'd really like to speak then. And I know we can discuss that as a board, but I want everyone to be able to speak, whether it's citizen input, maybe they can't stay till the action item, or they speak on the action item. And that's why I talked with Dr. Moore a little bit about that and asked if we could change that. So they could speak on consent, any general item. They can speak on action when it comes up. They just can't speak twice. So I think that's pretty fair to our public. And again, I want people to be able to speak when they wish to speak. I mean, that's my feedback.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that we're talking about the same exact thing. So what you're saying is that's procedure. But what I'm saying is last meeting, you did not do that. Last meeting, you allowed for a citizen to comment or check off every single box and every single letter 7 times.
Okay. Well, that's something we can discuss.
So you can fill out one form for one item at a time, but not one form for all items 7 times.
Well,
Because now, which one of these items did the person speak to at one particular time? You don't know. And neither would, that would be an inconvenience for Mrs. Esplin, who would have to go back into the video if that were a public record and, you know, spend a lot of time going through every single comment. So my point is, one form, one time for one item per person. Does that make sense? And
It does,
you all-
it does make sense. I'm just saying if we're just asking our public to fill out 5 forms instead of putting it on the paper, so, I mean.
That's the policy, though. That's the policy. That's what we have. That's what is on here. It's not new. It's not a new request. It's
Okay.
what we currently have in place.
I'm just bringing it up for discussion. I mean, I'm just making the comment, I'm just trying to say that for our public, I don't want to make it harder, so maybe we need to look at the form again so that it's not hard for our public, because I know it's hard for some of them to get here by 5:45, and a lot of them forget you can do it as long as you have the 24-hour notice online, so they don't have to be here by 5:45. So I understand your concern, I do.
And Madam Chair, I don't mean for us to change policy, because we don't always have someone filling out 7 forms or 5 forms in one meeting. Most people just fill out 1. But on the occasion that you have 5 or 6 or 7, we have to acknowledge that that's not appropriate for, you know, at least bring it up and say, you can always address the person right then and there as chair and say, look, in the future, please only fill out 1 of these boxes. Which one do you want to speak to now? And then make that notice on the form. That's what I'm addressing here. If we're going to allow something like this for everyone, then we're going to allow it for everyone. It's either one way or the other.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Through the chair, I think we follow the policy as it is written. It is logistically extremely hard to, without having a form filled out for each item. The chair, regardless of who the chair is, may have to go back and forth and miss a particular item. So filling it out for each and every single item just makes the flow of the meeting and operating the meeting from a chair's perspective so much easier. So I'll make sure staff, as they review those particular forms and ask clarifying questions to the individuals filling out the form, so they know exactly when they would be called based on how they're completing that particular form.
Okay, and that's a good point. I just want to add on the form, there's still confusion. It says, I wish to speak during citizen input, which is fine. I wish to speak to an action item is printed on the action agenda. The action item is, if they don't know it's being pulled from consent to action, if they come up here, like I said tonight, that you could speak during consent time, or you can wait and speak during action time, because that's still confusing.
So, through the chair, that's right. The agenda is printed or produced a week prior to the actual meeting. If a citizen would like to speak during public comment on any consent item, they can fill out a form and fill out, I wish to speak during the public hearing, and use that time to address something that was on consent. That takes place prior to you voting on consent. You have an item, a standing item on every agenda, which is the action item, which is approval of the consent agenda. So if an individual member of the community wanted to speak during public comment, they could fill out the public comment card, submit it out, and then because an item is on consent, they could fill out the form and say, I wish to speak to the action item, which is approval of consent. And then you would call them and they could address all of the items that are on consent, or one of the items. How they spend that 3 minutes is up to them. But they do have that opportunity as well.
And if they don't want to speak during citizen input regular, they could speak then during action.
Absolutely.
Ms. Rosario, thank you.
Would you open it up to any comments from any other board members?
I had looked at each one. Ms. Berenborg?
Yeah. It's interesting because how we do citizen input is different than other school boards, similar to some school boards. Even the Florida House of Representatives and the Senate and the state school board have different roles. They do a timer. So it was interesting to watch in a committee meeting. They set a timer on each item and say, okay, anyone want to speak? And then after the timer goes off, I don't care where you are in the order of speaking, they're done. And so some people get to speak, some people don't. Some people people speak for a lot longer than others because of the way they do it. So I don't know if that's fair. I didn't feel like it was fair when I was in the room. But I think at the state school board, I think they do it where you have 1 minute. Yeah, it's as many people want to speak and you get 1 minute to speak. And it's about any item that's on that agenda. So that, I think, is also restrictive. I think that we're fair in the fact that we're saying 3 minutes because, as you noticed from our last board meeting, we didn't get out of here till, I got home close to midnight. So I think that we want to be able to hear input, but we also want to be able to be focused and coherent during the meeting so that we can really do a good job with what citizens are telling us. Because I definitely changed one of my votes last week because of citizen input. So I think what would be good, and I did this before, is when somebody brought me a couple of items on there and I got them right before the meeting, I actually held off on the meeting a second to go ask the person, are you wanting to speak to each of these? Because if they get pulled, then you can speak to them. But if they don't get pulled, you can speak to them all in that 3 minutes. And so I clarified it for that person. People don't know unless they're coordinating with a board member up here what we're going to pull.
That's right.
And sometimes you can tell the people coordinated with a board member because you can see their form and they filled out too and they knew that the item was going to be pulled. So that's kind of interesting. But I will say this. Maybe people do it because they think maybe a board member will pull it. I don't know. And that's okay. I just think that the more we can hear for how people want to talk about something, I just think it's, some people do it so they can get 3 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 3 minutes here. I get that. I don't know if that's really helpful for us making decisions, though. I think we want to hear what people have to say, but it you know, be concise and to the point and tell us something that will help us with our voting. I think it would be great if when we looked at the form, you know, I know it's hard because if you have somebody that writes several down, it does make it hard because there was one time last year where I missed one and we had to stop and have to go back because of that. So I'm not sure how to redo the form or if the form's okay. Let me just finish that thought. But I think that we do need to let people know that they can speak to an item and maybe they fill out the item and if it doesn't get pulled, they speak to it at the beginning. And if it gets pulled, they can have the choice to speak when they want to speak.
That's what I was thinking, yeah, for the form. Thank you. Mr. Barefoot?
Nothing to add.
Dr. Posca? Ms. Rosario?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Good input. All right, this time we are on board member matters, and I'm going to start with Dr. Posca.
I'm going to hold my board comments for today.
Thank you. Ms. Barrenborn?
Sure. I attended zoning and planning last week, and things are slowing down a little bit, which is kind of fun. But building is continuing. It's just we're not getting project after project after project. But I will say the projects that I saw along the line now are more affordable housing, apartment complexes, duplexes, things like that. So that's helpful. Treasure Coast Council Local Governments, we meet every month, and you're all invited, of course, because that one is, and Nancy puts that one out on the schedule. And they meet down in St. Lucie County, but the Army Corps of Engineers was presenting this last one. It was quite informative. It was about water, didn't have anything to do with education, but it was informative to listen to and be in the room, you know, with lots of different city officials, county officials, school board members about what's happening with all the different 4 counties in our area. Similar things, but it's a good diverse group. I did go to the Up With Poverty Community Resources event. That was wonderful. Excellent job, and it was just a wonderful way for different community nonprofits to get their word out and connect with each other. And I learned some things, and I was able to tell them some things. So it was great that we were able to do that. And then Elementary Science Fair, of course, was this last week. And I will say this: they were short judges like crazy. And I don't know if you all knew that was going on, but I think maybe we need to do a better job in the school district of when you're short judges, hey, give us a call. I could have probably got 10 more people for them had I known, but I didn't know until I showed up that morning. that they were short judges. So it's just little things like that. And they might not have known, but there were a lot of things going on Saturday. That's why I couldn't go to the track meet. But there were a lot of things going on. I get that, but feel free to reach out and have board members know that we can help you with getting community people at things like that. All right.
Mr. Barefoot?
Back a month ago, it was February 16th, the school district had the opportunity to invite juniors and seniors to a presentation, or actually we call it a workshop for lack of a better term, by the folks from Fort Ticonderoga. And this came about because Kevin Given, who is the general manager of Quail Valley, one of their members is vice chairman of that board. And they were invited to come and speak to the membership at Quail Valley. And he thought it might be worthwhile if we chose to participate, if they were willing to come and talk to some of our students. So he got a hold of me, and I in turn spoke with Dr. Moore and Ms. Becerra. So I'm going to ask her to summarize exactly what took place, because it was actually a lot of fun. Just what I might do, though, Fort Ticonderoga, you've all heard of Fort Ticonderoga. What maybe people don't know, besides it's a venue, I mean, it was a fort started by the French way back in 1700, whatever the year was, a little before my time, but not much. But their mission is to preserve, educate, and provoke active discussion about the past and its importance to present and future generations. We foster an ongoing dialogue surrounding citizen soldiers and nations through America's military heritage. And we've all heard stories, what's going on in the so-called cancel culture that oftentimes we're trying to cancel, quote unquote, certain parts of our history. I think that if you sat through, and I did it twice, sat through their presentation and how they interacted with our students and some of our staff was quite interesting, and there's a terrific outcome. So, Ms. Becerra, why don't you review the day and the number of kids and what went on and et cetera.
Great, thank you. Through the chair. These are moments that actually make me love being an educator. The evening, the way we started the evening tonight, celebrating students and getting to share a little bit about what our students participated in. Thanks to John Mishonis, Kevin Given, Tabitha Gottfried, and of course, thank you, Mr. Barefoot, for connecting the dots. Our students were, it was really called a lecture series, but it was a lot more than a lecture series. It was immersive, it was engaging. Our students actually became Continental soldiers. I did as well, and I can tell you they're better at it than I am. Stuart was the man who presented this information to our students in full costume from 200 years ago, and so it was very interesting. But what I find most interesting is the way our students wrote about this. Thankfully, the Quail Valley Charities and Kevin Given offered 2 scholarship opportunities, and our students were able to, they didn't have to, but they were able to write an essay in response to the day. I have a teenage child of my own, and I'm not sure that I could get her to write an essay right now unless she absolutely had to. So I was really pleasantly surprised the number of students who took the opportunity to write essays in response to their experience. And just as a quick little, I'll just read the intro of one of them, and the 2 winners don't know who they are yet, so hopefully they're not listening and we give it away. This is a student's writing, so I think this is just incredibly impressive. In the busy and fast-paced environments we experience daily, it is easy to lose focus on the history of the United States. However, it is important to reflect on how people from more than 2 centuries ago fought for the United States and built a strong foundation for the powerful nation we have today. This simple yet significant responsibility is something that I was reminded of when I attended the visit of a Fort Ticonderoga lecturer at Quail Valley. This visit reminded me of the bravery that the Revolutionary soldiers demonstrated, as well as the fact that history is such an invaluable source of knowledge, as it can remind us of how lucky we are to have stability in our country and warn us of potential dangers that may happen again in the future. Just a little intro, just to give you a little taste of some of our writing that our students were able to produce based on the events of that day. And we have 2 students that in the next 2 weeks will know that they are scholarship winners. So thank you for helping us connect those dots. It was a great experience.
You know, the one thing that I would add is they started lining all these kids up, and let's say round numbers, 50 kids, and then some staff. And then they took them, they marched them outside and along the waterfront, if you've been to Quail Valley. And as they marched, it's sort of like a bunch of kids in a line. They start off tightly knit, and then they sort of get further and further apart, so the guy stops them. And he said, "This is the most undisciplined group of soldiers I have ever seen. You've got to stay together. You're a team. You've got to stay tight. You've got to say," well, from that point on, there was about that much room between each of the kids as they walked along the waterfront. And he would stop and point out the importance of the formations and the interaction, and that they're a team, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a fun exercise. I'm sure none of us knew what to expect, let alone having the instructor show up in full Continental Army garb. But it's great to be able to do this, and it's nice that we have people in the community that are involved with organizations that think about the school district and our kids when they're in the area.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario?
Thank you. I went to STEAM Fest, and it was a wonderful, wonderful event. As always, I'm never disappointed when I go there. We did not have 6 schools as I expected. We had instead 3. So I'd like to just thank Rosewood Elementary, Treasure Coast Elementary School, and Gifford Middle School, who all had a table and had a really, really fantastic display for kids, all hands-on experiences throughout. I will tell you that something that it's kind of personal, but it makes a big difference with regard to the STEAM Fest. So I go every year to STEAM Fest. Everybody knows that. I champion it. I think it's fantastic. Well, this year, I was in the, I didn't know what my son was doing. I was following him around. But there was a couple of days later, he and I were talking about possibly going the route of dual enrollment. And so we were looking at the dual enrollment application and looking at the dual enrollment programs, because as you choose that, if you're going to go dual enrollment, you have to choose a path, right? You're going to graduate with an associate's, you need a major. So as I'm going through the list of all the majors in Indian River State College, I said, which one would you want to do? And then he said, surgical science. So I was like, what? Like, I couldn't believe that he said surgical science, because we'd never talked about that. Well, when I asked him why, he said, well, at this last STEAM Fest event, there was a gentleman there who had a life-size dummy, a plastic, it wasn't even plastic, it was rubber. It was fully rubber with what looked like real teeth. I mean, the thing looked amazing. And it had, you can see the muscles and you can see the tendons. And if you move the leg, you can see the movement of the muscle and the tendons. And then if you move the chest forward, you can pull out the heart, and they can see all the little shapes of the heart. Anyway, so when I said, you know, what made you think of surgical science? Because we've never talked about that ever. And he said, well, when we went to the last STEAM Fest and I saw that the body was in anatomy, something anatomy, he said, I really liked that and it was really interesting. So it goes to show you it only takes one vendor, one time to really make an impact on a student. And you know, we'll see if that's the route that he wants for the rest of his life, but right now he was very intrigued with it. And that's why I think it's so important for our schools to get involved in events like this. Why I push it so much every year is because it matters. And it means something that not only are we getting out and about and showing a presence in the community, but also that we are influencing children. And you never know if there's that one child who is going to be really impacted by something that's related, obviously, to STEM, to STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So that was a wonderful event. I also want to share the work that all of Indian River County students are doing as they participate in our local firefighters fair. The Indian River County students' youth, livestock, and horticulture shows and events are going on even right now as we speak. They are, I went on Friday, they're really, the work is just impeccable. It's incredible to me how they are so dedicated to raising pigs and chickens and goats and citrus trees and, monitoring all of that and logging all of their activity and all the monies that they make, and then they auction it out and then they sell it. They get, blue ribbons for each of their livestock. It's just really a wonderful opportunity for us to get out and support students in this endeavor. It's no secret that everyone knows I'm a proponent of possibly getting a vet tech or an ag program here, and this is just one way for us to be able to see the impact and the interest of the students in our county with this particular area. The other thing that I'd like to share is that I went to the Sebastian River High School. I didn't stay long, but I went to the Sebastian River High School NJROTC military ball. So cute, so cute. I can't tell you how cute that was. So they're doing great stuff there. They're really raising leaders, future leaders, and they're doing a great job. When you talk about walking formation, obviously we saw the kids here putting up, doing the flag, and so it matters, it means something, and those students who are a part of the JROTC program, they are a family, and they love what they are doing and they love what they're learning, so I'm happy to share that.
Thank you, Ms. Rosario, and thank you for mentioning that with ROTC. My former AD, Michael Stutsky, and I worked really, really hard to bring that program to Sebastian River High School years ago, and I think it has many, many benefits to our students, and they are a family. Felsmer Night of Enchantment, one of the best programs I have seen next to PRISM, and Sebastian River High School Coral Sharks were there, but this was an absolutely outstanding program with dinner, public partners, and donations. Dr. Moore, Felsmer is truly a community school, yes, and it is supported 100% by parents, and that night was absolutely outstanding. You could not imagine these were elementary students. As Ms. Berenborg said, Mr. Barefoot and I and Ms. Berenborg were United Against Poverty with the nonprofits. Wonderful event, bringing the community together. And this ties in a little bit with, I sent some information to the board. I was invited to a United Way meeting, and there were about 100 people. It was called Powered by Purpose. And they just shared again what our community is facing at this time. We have 60% in Indian River County that are either poverty or ALICE. ALICE is asset limited, income constrained employed, or the working poor. Then it talks about children and getting them ready for school. And of course, our county commissioners are now looking at 0.25 millage and whether we'll go forward with that with our children's services. But this was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Jeff Pickery from the Community Foundation had a lot to say about where we need help. And it was just really, really great. And I think as a school district, we need to understand that about how many families are struggling and what we can do. Wabasso Inclusion Walk Run, that was a great event held, I think their last period with all of their students for inclusion. Every one of the students participated. It was fun, and kudos to that staff. They're always there for the students. Felsmer Planning and Zoning, I usually am on Zoom with that, but that's a great meeting. And Mark Mathis was talking a little bit about that at the United Way Forum, but they are talking about some additions and building, and I'm sure all of you see the building out there in State Road 60, so I think we'll have some impact pretty soon with that. College Fair was wonderful. That was at the mall last week. And just a reminder to our students, most scholarships are due around March 15th, so just know that deadline. I'm on a couple of scholarship committees, so watch that deadline. And I see that we got a little bit more donation for the community center as far as the Joe Graves property, and I know we're working toward that, but thank you again to everyone who was here and for all of your input tonight. We appreciate you. All right, the time is 8:22.
Hold on, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Superintendent, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clarify with Ms. Besser, we actually, Vero Beach High School was also at the STEAM Fest, and Glendale just kind of set up shop, correct?
Vero Beach High School, Jeff Bush's class was there, as was several art teachers as well. They
The art display, right?
did the art display, the art experience, and we did have 2 schools that did show up that we did not mention that had some scheduling snafus, so they showed up and were unable to participate because of space.
All right, and I also wanted to say, just next week is spring break, a well-deserved spring break, so I hope everyone has the opportunity to disconnect from this work. A great deal of work will take place when we get back from the break. We will not ease into spring break. As I mentioned during my presentation, we will be working extremely hard this week to disaggregate the data that we have to ensure the remaining time when we return prior to the last assessment is fully engaged and fully focused instruction. Looking forward to a very positive last quarter of the school year, and it's absolutely amazing that we're already getting ready to open the last quarter of the school year. Absolutely bizarre. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, everyone. The time is 8:24. Meeting adjourned.